Can you guys hear me now? We want peace for mankind, but really is mankind. We put a peace sign on a t-shirt, hoping in due time it might work. Start a new trend for a new ending, sending messages of love and unity. But the ironic thing is, that peace shirt was probably peace by cruelty. We work hard to look good, but do we give the work good looks to distinguish between the artists and the crooks? We chase after the latest digs from New York, Paris, and Milan, but act like it doesn't matter when it's made in China or Pakistan. What a phenomenon. We pay for designs and cover up the crimes every time we put a jacket on. And it's a cold world out there, so we build sweatshops for sportswear, exercise the rights granted for free trade zones, where wage slavery is whipped by the invisible hand of the free market. So we say, just do it. And we're clueless while we rush for those sales and discounts, but how do we call it savings when it's people we discount? World trade saves economies, so we build maquiladoras for minimal money in Tijuana, Mexico. And that's considered a good deal for business as usual. And good business is telling you how to be beautiful. We shop for designs for people that are in the photos wearing those suits and dresses so we can picture ourselves to be like those who've been photoshopped. We buy magazines that tell us what to buy so companies can buy advertisements that ignore the sacrifices made in poorer countries just to get by. And we could say bye-bye to the beautiful parks, trees, gardens, and green spaces. We trade them in for malls, more malls, bigger malls, and green faces. It seems dead presidents takes precedence over land wasted. We're dressed to kill. That's why we use special agents to eliminate any threats that might make our cash crops ill. Chemical weapons that destroy ecologies for the sake of economies and markets. It's been fashionable to ruin nature for a bigger harvest. And a good season is when a brand reaches their revenue targets. Not about how the health of the soil falls, where plants will never spring again, as long as we have our summer tanks and winter parkas. And that's okay as long as the damage is farther away. Farmers in India today use pesticides to commit suicide caused by genetically modified seeds, and contrary to what was advertised, doesn't provide them with what they need. And companies will try to deny this and say, hey, it's not our fault this happens, but it's hard to believe they really value life when they claim seeds with patents. So let's not care about the intellectual property rights on human nature or the hazards of being a minimum wager, and let's get back to fashion. Let's not care about Bangladesh as long as we're well dressed, and let's not think about Uzbeki children picking cotton as long as we look appealing. Let's not think about the ties and bonds that put the shirts on our backs. Find the right jeans and shirt to match. Let's want peace for mankind with no strings attached. There's more. Okay. So I call this, do I need this? Okay. I call this poem No Strings Attached because we often don't think about who or what we're tied to when we make a simple decision like buying a piece of clothing. So let me give you an example. This is the Aral Sea. Aral Sea used to be the 4th largest lake in the world. Now it's lost over 90% of its water. So what if I told you that you, all of you, and myself included, were part of destroying this sea? So how can that happen? Well, the Aral Sea is between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan is the 2nd largest exporter of cotton in the world. They call it white gold. It's really important for their economy. And so this white gold needs a lot of water, and Uzbekistan doesn't have that much water. So what happens, very simply, governments think, hey, we'll take water from the Aral Sea, we'll put it into our cotton, we'll have a big harvest, we'll have a great economy. Boom, we're done. And boom, we have one of the worst man-made natural disasters in history. So, how do we all connect to this? Well, how many of you have a shirt that says made in Uzbekistan? Probably nobody. Now, how many of you have a shirt that says made in China or made in Bangladesh? Probably all of you. And if you are not raising your hands, you're probably just lying. I'm sorry. And why are you lying? Because, well, it's been, in the past 20 years, Uzbekistan has been exporting cotton to China and Bangladesh for textile garments. And so that's why we're tied to the RLC problem. But now we're tied to more problems. We have the problems in China, where we know that we have problems with sweatshops and child labor. We know that we have problems with toxic waste. And then we have Bangladesh, which just last year, a textile factory collapsed and killed about 1,000 people and injured about 2,500. And this happened because they didn't have any standards. And they don't have any standards because basically companies are looking for the cheapest prices, the cheapest quality, the cheapest labor. And when you're always going for the cheapest, you're not thinking about not just the quality of the clothing, but the quality of the building where things are being made. And here they actually built 4 floors, which caused the building to collapse because it wasn't strong enough to withstand that. So now we have more problems. We have the RLC problem, we have the problems with sweatshops, we have the problems with child labor, we have the problems with the Dhaka collapse. You know, we're tied to a lot of things, so what can we do about it? And actually, a lot of you here, like a very specific artist that probably has a solution. You might know him. This is Macklemore, and he made it popular to shop at a thrift shop. And a thrift shop is where you can buy secondhand clothing. So how is this sustainable? Well, actually, maybe it could help. Maybe we stop buying clothes that support sweatshops and support Uzbeki cotton. And you know, we actually really don't need more clothes. We have a lot of clothes already. We have a lot of clothes in this world. We waste them. How many times have you given away clothes or thrown away clothes? We don't need them. But we know that, unfortunately, though a song is popular, this is not a sustainable trend. And why is that? It's because we use cotton for a lot of other things. We use cotton for our pillows. We use cotton for your bed sheets, for your curtains, for bags, for a lot of different things. And so there's more problems. Cotton uses more pesticides out of any other non-food crop in the world. So we're using these pesticides and we keep using them. What happens is we're killing the soil. We're letting pesticides get into the water supply. And it's also terrible for the farmers. And especially in poorer countries, these farmers, they spray the pesticides with no protective gear. And it causes them to get nauseous, it causes them to vomit. And it's also been found that these pesticides are linked to causing cancer. And that shouldn't be surprised because pesticides are just made to kill. So now we have GMOs, and that's another problem with cotton. GMOs are supposed to lessen the use of pesticides because they put a special gene that makes these seeds resistant to the pests. Nevertheless, these GMO seeds don't always work as they're advertised. Why is that? Well, it has something to do with nature because the weeds and the pests all evolve with the pesticides and with the seeds. So it's a continuing process. And see now what's another problem? Another problem is that these farmers, they can't reuse the seeds. And the reason they can't reuse the seeds is because the GMO seeds are patented. And they're patented by the companies. And so usually when you have, for example, like an apple, you should be able to take that apple, bite into it, take the seeds, put it into the ground, let light shine through it, put water, and you should have a renewable resource. But you can't do that here because they get sued if they try to reuse the seeds. So they get stuck, and we have this problem in India now. So they're planning a harvest. Imagine you're a farmer, you're planning a harvest, it doesn't work, you don't get any money from it, and you can't reuse your seeds, so now you're stuck. You can't pay for new seeds, you can't keep going. And in India, the current statistic right now is about every 30 minutes, a farmer in India commits suicide because if they commit suicide, they get out of debt because the government forgives all debts for people who have died. So now we've got a lot of other problems here. We've got the problems with the GMOs, the pesticides, the child labor, sweatshops, the RLC problem. And what are we going to do to try to solve it? And so in 2011, I traveled around Europe and I traveled around Turkey to have a better understanding of what kind of solution we can have. And what I found was that the solution is actually here. And the solution is organic cotton and organic cotton clothing. And it can be found here in Turkey. So what is here? So in organic cotton, Turkey is the second largest producer of organic cotton in the world. The first one is India, but the problem with India is that they have the GMO problem. So another problem with GMOs is that the seeds can get mixed with the organic seeds. The GMO seeds get mixed with the organic seeds, and so they can't really tell which ones are organic and which ones are not. But luckily, Turkey is GMO-free. And so I spoke with some of the farmers, and not only are they GMO-free, but they're able to use the same seeds time and time again, the traditional seeds. And that's part of the reason why Turkey has some of the best quality cotton in the world. And so what about pesticides? Well, I asked them, what do you do to get rid of the pests? This is a common problem for all farmers, especially cotton farmers. And you know what they told me? They said, we use garlic and water. I'm dead serious. They use garlic and water. Farmers spend a lot of money to get these chemicals that kill the soil and just are terrible to their health, and they use garlic and water. So that solves the cotton problem, which is great. So what about the clothing problem? Well, for organic cotton clothing, there's a really nice standard called the Global Organic Textile Standard, which is GOTS for short. So GOTS has environmental standards, so they make sure that the factories use organic cotton, but they also make sure that the wastewater is being treated and not being dumped into local water supplies. And they have social standards. They make sure that people have living wages, that there's no child labor. And they make sure there's safety standards in the actual factory so that they don't have the same problems they do in Bangladesh. So that's great. And then the best part about the GOTS certification is it's traceable. So when you look at a tag that's GOTS certified piece of clothing, you have a number on that clothing that you can put online, and then you can see exactly where it came from. So we can no longer have the issue where companies say, hey, I didn't know I was tied to the destruction of the RLC. So that's great. So now we have a solution. We do have a solution, and it solves the problems of child labor and these toxic chemicals and problems with cotton. And so why is nothing being done about it? Is it because it's expensive? Well, actually, no. Organic cotton is more expensive than regular cotton, about 10 to 15% more expensive. Nevertheless, as you can see, from cotton to clothing, there's a lot of steps that go through that. That means there's a lot of different processes and a lot of different costs and a lot of different people getting paid. So when I talk to manufacturers and I ask them, what's the cost difference between organic cotton clothing and a normal piece of clothing, they say it's about 25 cents. So cost is not really the issue. And actually, there's a lot of bigger brands out there that are doing organic cotton, and they're selling these shirts for cheap or these pieces of clothing for cheap. But you probably don't hear about them. You probably don't hear about their conscience. And that's kind of weird to me. So when I was traveling, I met this designer in Berlin. His name is Kenan. He has this cool brand called Ken Panda. And I asked him, why are you doing organic cotton? You know, why are you doing 100% organic cotton? And he said, when I heard about the problems, I just immediately switched my whole line to make sure it's 100% organic cotton so that I have a sustainable impact. And I think that's great. But why is it that the bigger brands don't do the same? Why did they say we need steps to get there? And maybe they have their own reasons, but nevertheless, I still want to support these small brands like Kenan. So where do you find these small brands like Kenan? Well, there's not really many shops you can find them. They're not in the malls. I found one in Haarlem, Netherlands. It's a shop called Rixon's, and they sell only organic clothing. But those places are few and far between. So where do we go now to find something when we can't find it anywhere else? The internet. And so currently in the internet, there's a website called Fashioning Change, and they support designers like Kenan. They support independent designers, organic fashion designers, and they have a really nice campaign too. It's called Wear This, Not That. And they compare these brands, these independent brands, to bigger brands. And they say this brand is 100% organic, and this brand is not. This brand uses sweatshops, and this brand doesn't. And they also compare it to what causes they do. So maybe a brand supports, for example, LGBT advocacy. And so there's another site called Roost that does the same thing. They not only support organic clothing, but they support other things like AIDS research or ending hunger in Africa. And they have these different ways of doing that. So now think about this for a second. We now have clothing that's not just made to look good, but we have clothing that's made to do good. That's a different kind of innovation, in my opinion. And so maybe you're not convinced. Maybe you're saying, yeah, we have these cause t-shirts, you know, they say free Tibet, they say save Darfur, but what is really the impact? And so there's another site that has cause-based t-shirts, and for every t-shirt that they sell, they give $7 to a cause. And for this one, it's Rescue Refugee. They were helping refugees who escaped North Korea. And so this site donates $7 to each cause for every shirt that they sell. And in 2 years, they've raised $3.5 million to go towards these charities or these NGOs or these organizations. So now it's not just saying, hey, I have a cool t-shirt that's, you know, raises awareness. They're actually creating a real impact for these organizations and helping them with their bottom line. So we've gone from clothing that has serious problems to clothing that solves those problems with organic cotton clothing. And then we've gone through clothing that solves different problems, that solves different challenges. And who here wants to see a trend like that continue? And so the last thing I want to talk about is trends. And not fashion trends, but a trend that I saw while I was traveling. When I was in Spain in July 2011, I was in Madrid. And I saw that people were campering around the center square. And they had their tents up, and then they had pictures of their protests. And I asked them, what are you protesting about? And what surprised me was that they're protesting about something very broad. Usually you're expecting to hear something like end drilling, or, you know, or support the local economy, but theirs were more wide. They said, we're against corrupt government, we're against corrupt capitalism. And then I went to Berlin, and I saw the same thing. And this was really interesting to me because I've lived in Berlin before, and this is the center of the city in Alexanderplatz. And I saw the exact same thing in the next month. People were camped out, they were sitting in circles, they were having discussions about the issues with our institutions. And then you fast forward to the next month, and I wasn't there, but in my home country, we had Occupy Wall Street. And so there's two things I learned about these trends. The first one is that we're all extremely interconnected. Information travels really fast. And I don't need to talk about the protests that are going on here in Turkey, but how amazing was it that the protests here ignited a protest in Brazil extremely quickly. The second thing I learned is that we all really want change. You know, that's why people are going out in the streets. That's why you're here today at a TEDx conference. And we all really want this. So what I want to leave with you today is that we all want change in this world, and we're all very interconnected, and we have the power to set new trends. And I wanted to show you how simple a t-shirt made with the right reasons can make a difference in this world, and can make a difference for all of us. Thank you.